The horror, the butchery.
She stabbed him the whole way as he was running down the hallway.
A deranged woman's unspeakable revenge.
So began her lifelong fascination with knives.
The crime of a true psychopath.
A psychopath, kind of an unstoppable predator.
Probing the twisted minds.
I have it here!
This is a classic pattern.
Of the most evil killers on Earth.
The compulsion to do it was too strong.
On screen and in real life.
He loved what he was doing.
How killers have the last laugh. Hello, I'm Layla McKinnon. Welcome to Inside Story. Psychopaths and serial killers, they and their crimes are horrifying and repulsive. They're predators who lie, manipulate and murder with no remorse, nothing. Yet there's something strangely fascinating about them. Why else would millions of us want to see movies like Psycho or Silence of the Lambs? Tonight, Peter Stefanovic takes us into the disturbing world of the psychopath, and we should be ready for a few surprises.
We should be, Layla, because while many psychopaths are quite rightly considered pure evil, they were born that way, but not all of them are bad. Some psychopathic traits lead people to great success across many different fields.
That's right. As we'll see, not all psychopaths are bloodthirsty killers.
It's just after 8 a.m, March the 1st, 2000, in the tiny village of Aberdeen, New South Wales. And inside this cottage, police are confronted with a scene of unspeakable savagery.
All I wanted for him was not to suffer, but he did suffer.
As we'll see later, John Price wasn't so much murdered as butchered by his partner, abattoir worker Katherine, Australia's most notorious psychopath.
She cut parts of his body off and cooked them with vegetables to serve to his children, plated them up, stabbed photos of his children. She also fed parts of his body to the dog. People ask how could she do something like that. Katherine actually enjoyed what she did that night.
She's evil. I dead set believe she's evil.
They lie, manipulate and even murder. But as you'll discover, that's what makes psychopaths so dangerous. They're simply incapable of most normal human emotions. Yet they often appear so sincere, so plausible, so, well, normal.
A psychopath is a kind of an unstoppable predator.
Tonight, we'll come face to face with some of the most infamous psychopaths of all time. Jeffrey Dahmer.
After the second time, I didn't even try to stop it after that.
Ted Bundy.
Sure, I get angry. I get very, very angry.
And Charles Manson.
You know, if I wanted to kill somebody, I'd take this book and beat you to death with it. I killed her.
Isn't it amazing how matter-of-fact he is?
With the help of our experts, we'll take you inside the mind of a psychopath to reveal just what makes them tick.
The hallmark of a psychopath is an individual without a conscience. These people will take advantage of you, they will hurt you.
But be prepared for a big surprise, because psychopaths aren't always cold-blooded killers, and they're not as rare as you might think. They're all around us. In fact, there might be one sitting beside you, on the couch, right now.
You don't have to kill or rape to be a psychopath. There's about 1% population are psychopaths. If you broaden it out to near psychopaths, it could be up to 5, 7, 8%. But many of them, most all of them, are not murderers or rapists. But they're not so pleasant to be around all the time.
But what I really want to do is I want to reach in, rip out their heart, and eat it before they die.
So yes, all those jokes about the boss being a psycho mightn't be so far off the mark after all.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
But according to our experts, that same drive, ruthlessness and focus that makes your life a misery isn't all bad.
When somebody comes into a room and they have that light around them, the charisma, that's fearless dominance. And great leaders have that, and they're very successful. They lie at the right time, they take great risks, and they can be quite aggressive. They're leaders.
So just what is a psychopath? For the answer, we'll visit some of the world's leading authorities, like FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole.
They lack empathy for other people. They have no guilt for what they do. They're very grandiose people, very self-centered. But these are people that are very glib and charming, so when they walk into a room, most psychopaths can light up a room. They're impulsive, but they're also very parasitic. They live off of other people. They're also very manipulative.
Good morning.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Clarice Starling. May I speak with you?
Mary Ellen O'Toole, a real-life Clarice Starling, says the clues are all around us in movies such as The Silence of the Lambs.
May I see your credentials?
Certainly.
Dr. O'Toole believes Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of psychopathic serial killer Hannibal Lecter is masterful.
Closer, please. Closer.
He's saying closer, closer, and he's enjoying playing with her like a cat and mouse game, but he wants to see that fear.
Are you strong?
She uses the movie to train new recruits in the pitfalls of interviewing psychopaths.
Madam, why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're afraid to.
What happened there is that she challenged him. So you could kind of see it when her features sort of scrunched together.
Be judgmental.
And she was judgmental, and she challenged him. And his response was,
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
So, word to the wise, you don't threaten a psychopath.
So why didn't you do it again?
I didn't want my son to see it.
And Dr. O'Toole should know. In the past 30 years, she's interviewed and helped convict some of the most notorious psychopaths of all time, such as Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, who murdered as many as 70 women.
My experience is that psychopaths view feelings and emotions as a weakness. So when they start crying and sobbing, and they're going to be very believable. And if you're one of these warm and fuzzy kinds of people, that's a weakness as far as they're concerned. That is blood in the water of a shark.
I stabbed a kid one time.
Coming up on Inside Story, how the profiler snared America's worst serial killer.
And I thought, those are the eyes your victims saw right before you killed them.
Pulled her back as far as I could, and that would choked her to death.
Psychopaths are ruthless liars, and Gary Ridgway is one of the worst we've seen. To break him, the FBI needed one of its best. Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole needed to work with Gary Ridgway the way Clarice Starling worked with Hannibal Lecter, and it all takes time.
I know off the bat they're going to be very grandiose, because that's one of the 20 traits. I know that they're going to be arrogant. I know that they're going to be narcissistic.
I stabbed a kid one time.
Start the interview off making it all about the psychopath. He's grandiose, he's egotistical, let him talk.
And that's just what Dr. O'Toole did during her marathon interviews with Gary Ridgway, the man recognised as America's worst serial killer.
Gary Ridgway is a phenomenally interesting individual.
Mr. Ridgway, I'm going to ask you one more time to the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree. How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Ridgway, who is known as the Green River Killer, murdered a staggering 70 women over 17 years, from 1982 up until the late 90s. It would take all of Dr. O'Toole's skills to finally coax a confession from him.
I mean, you had to have a way of feeling them out. Explain that process to me.
Well, every time I opened up my wallet, there would be a picture of my son on one side, and they'd see that, and that would lower any big defenses.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that would be better than that would be to have your son in the car with you. That would be an incredible ruse.
That happened once.
He seems pretty receptive to your questions, encouraging your train of thought by consistently going, Were you aware of that?
I was. And you can see I'm sitting really close to him and I'm forcing him to look me in the eye, but I'm not at all accusatory or judgmental. It's two professionals talking about serial murder.
Ridgway stalked and murdered prostitutes and runaways. His hunting ground, Seattle, was a city gripped by fear.
Here's Gary Ridgway realizing that he's the one that is bringing Seattle to their knees. He's got the power. And I've actually had Gary tell me it's almost omnipotent, that he had the power of life and death over his victims.
Took her into an area and my son was there and I killed her. I'm real sure my son didn't see it. But that only happened one time.
Isn't it amazing how matter of fact he is? Does this sound like a guy that just snapped one day and started to go out and kill? Or someone that's really thought through the human psychic of how do you pick up victims that you ultimately want to murder?
For 20 darn long years.
Thanks to the efforts of Mary Ellen O'Toole, Ridgway confessed to all his crimes and was sentenced to 49 life terms in prison. But that confession also spared him the death penalty.
I hope you're right in hell.
And at one point in the interview, I was pressing him on the emotions. The tearing stopped. His nose stopped running, and I could see the eyes. They're called snake eyes, and they exist in psychopaths, and they lose all the shine in them. And I thought, those are the eyes your victims saw right before you killed them.
Here in Australia, investigators were confronted by that very same icy indifference when they interviewed psychopath John Wayne Glover, the notorious granny killer.
He did not show any remorse whatsoever to any of the offences. He was very detached, and he would just talk openly to us as if he was doing the Saturday morning shopping.
Retired Detective Dennis O'Toole was one of the men who captured Glover after a reign of terror that lasted 12 months. Glover stalked the affluent Sydney suburb of Mossman using a hammer to murder 6 elderly women.
Well, obviously we have somebody out there who has got a very sick mind. I describe him as basically a bully, a coward, apart from being a thief and a serial murderer.
The first to die was 82-year-old Gwendolyn Mitchell-Hill. She was walking home from the shops when Glover spotted her. He followed her to the foyer of her apartment and attacked, bashing her repeatedly with a claw hammer and strangling her with her own pantyhose. The pattern was set. Over the next year came 4 more random killings. 84-year-old Lady Winfreda Ashton, 85-year-old Margaret Pard, 81-year-old Olive Cleveland, and Muriel Falconer, 93.
Essentially, he killed elderly ladies in order to feel a sense of power and control within himself.
Not only were the crimes unbelievably brutal, what came next was the mark of a true psychopath.
He robbed them of their monies out of their purses, and then he'd go to the RSL and shout people out of the proceeds of his stealing.
He's murdered this person, he's stolen her money, nobody knows except for him. He feels very, very powerful, very much in control of everyone and himself. He then goes and buys everyone a round of drinks, and he's thinking quietly to himself, these people have no idea this money's just been taken from somebody I murdered. And that's where he would derive pleasure from that.
Glover, a pie salesman in his 50s, had been in and out of trouble much of his life. As a teenager, he was convicted of stealing, and in his 20s he was found guilty of indecent assault. Ominously, all his life, Glover had serious issues with older women.
He despised his mother, and I believe he despised his mother-in-law, whom he lived with for some time. And he certainly had a grudge against elderly women.
Glover was finally arrested at the home of an old friend, 60-year-old Joan Sinclair. She'd become Glover's 6th victim before he tried to take his own life. When Dennis O'Toole's team burst into the house, he found the serial killer in the bath, barely alive.
Must have been an awful lot of relief once you got him.
I really can't recall any relief there at any stage, Peter, to be honest. Must have been a relief, but I can't say that I actually felt that relief.
Dennis O'Toole would spend hundreds of hours interviewing Glover in prison over the next few years. Glover's supreme self-control was a constant frustration, but there were frightening glimpses of the monster within.
He was sitting opposite me at the table in Lithgow Jail, and he all of a sudden he just smashed his hand down on the table and jumped up and took the table with him, and I'm on the other side. From that moment on, I knew I'd never turn my back on him, and I'd had him in my position all the time. It was the rage that must have taken place prior to these murders.
John Wayne Glover admitted to 6 murders, but in 2005 he committed suicide in prison, denying police the chance to charge him with as many as 3 other killings.
How often do you think about him now?
Unfortunately, I think about him from time to time.
How much does that have to do with unfinished business? That you were so close to perhaps pinning 3 more murders to him?
It just would have been good closure to the families, to the people that were involved. It's a long time ago, but people that are involved and were involved still remember. And I think it would have been very decent for them to know that he was the person responsible.
Coming up, the most cunning predators.
And I acted on my fantasies.
Why they kill and kill again.
Sure, I get angry. I'm very, very angry.
The only motive that there ever was to completely control a person and keep them with me as long as possible, even if it meant just keeping a part of them.
Jeffrey Dahmer murdered and mutilated 17 young men in a killing spree that lasted barely 3 years.
I don't know, looking for something to, some way to find some fulfillment, some pleasure.
He could be very charming, and many people can, but he could be glib, and he could be very seductive, and he was smart too, which really, he got away with things.
Dahmer's victims were all picked up from bars and taken back to his house where they were drugged, raped, killed, and then dismembered. He kept a body part from each man as a trophy.
And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
To most of us, the idea that someone could carry out these sickening crimes is unthinkable. So what made people like Jeffrey Dahmer and John Glover capable of such gruesome killings? Were they born bad, or did they turn bad? Well, the answer is both. Psychopaths are the product of nature and nurture.
People would say, is it nature or nurture? And it turns out to be yes, because it's how they interact that's very important.
Neuroscientist Professor Jim Fallon has found the psychopath's brain is hardwired differently to that of a normal person. The difference lies in the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that deals with emotion.
You can see the main effect here is that these parts of the frontal lobe are turned off in the psychopath, and that's the pattern.
But it's early childhood experiences that set a psychopath on the path to becoming a remorseless killer.
The first couple of years of life are really when this really changes and sets off or pulls the trigger on the bullets that the genes make up. We're talking about emotional or physical or sexual abuse, and the closer it is to the time of birth, the more the abuse has a devastating effect. And the abuse can be abandonment too.
In Jeffrey Dahmer's case, his deeply religious father had psychopathic tendencies that he fought his entire life, while his mother abused prescription drugs, even during pregnancy.
It looks like two bad bullets. One is that his mother and that family had pretty big problems psychiatrically in terms of addictions and violence. And also on his father's side was also a tough character. He looks like somebody that was doomed, very early on.
But if Jeffrey Dahmer was a doomed, tormented man, he wasn't showing it. At the height of his killing spree, he maintained an air of complete control. This unsettling home video, filmed during the time he was murdering and eating his victims.
Well, you're looking good. Grandma was saying that she thought that you got quite a bit thinner, but you look fit. I don't know.
Well, I've been surviving mostly on McDonald's food. It's just so much easier just to pop into a restaurant. But
yeah,
like I've said before, it gets too expensive, and
it does.
I have to start eating at home more.
Dahmer's killings finally came to an end after the man he intended to be his 18th victim escaped from his apartment. When police visited the unit to interview Dahmer, a scene of utter depravity confronted them. In this barrel were 3 torsos, the fridge contained severed heads, while other gruesome mementos littered the house.
Jeffrey, I hate you! I know!
The anger and disgust at Dahmer's crimes erupted in court. Dahmer apologised to the victims' families.
I have seen their tears, and if I could give my life right now to bring their loved ones back, I would do it. I am so very sorry.
But it was all just words. This man was simply incapable of true emotion. Sentenced to life imprisonment, Dahmer was himself murdered in a prison shower in 1994.
I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal, and I don't like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
Like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy was the product of deeply flawed genetics and a traumatic childhood.
The mother had problems, the father had problems, he was abused very early on, and many people now suspect that the real father is his mother's father, his grandfather. And he was a very abusive, extremely abusive guy, and was probably a psychopath himself.
Ted Bundy kidnapped, raped and murdered at least 36 young girls and women during a 4-year period in the 70s. But experts are convinced the final count is much higher.
Now, Ted Bundy had almost every characteristic of a full-blown, categorical, primary psychopath.
You're going to represent yourself, or you're going to get another attorney?
I'm staying with the man I know best right now, and that's me.
Outwardly, Bundy looked like a normal human being. He was handsome and charismatic.
He was very glib, very charming. He could talk his way into anybody's life. And he was very callous, and he didn't have any real empathy.
I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, you know, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with him.
In this interview, recorded just 18 hours before his execution, Bundy's calm demeanour belies the savagery of his crimes and his impending fate.
Aware that I can't begin to understand the pain that the parents of these children that I have and these young women that I have harmed feel. And I can't restore really much to them, if anything. I won't pretend to, and I don't even expect them to forgive me, and I'm not asking for it. That kind of forgiveness is of God, and if they have it, they have it. If they don't, well, maybe they'll find it someday.
Here in Australia, we can trace Katherine Knight's shocking murder of partner John Price all the way back to a dark and violent childhood.
Her father was violent to her mother was violent to her. Father, and she was sexually abused. Now, a lot of the times children will take that and it will affect their personality, but only a very, very, very small group of people will take the violence that's inflicted upon them, fantasize upon it, and then when they get the opportunity, inflict it upon others. So when you get that true combination of perhaps an inherited predisposition towards violence, and you put that with a terribly abusive upbringing, that can create that perfect storm of the true psychopath. She's a very rare creature, and the crime that she committed was so so abhorrent that most people couldn't believe it.
Coming up, the daughter's warning that could have saved John Price.
I used to tell Dad all the time, get rid of her.
Katherine Knight was an angry, abused girl who grew into a violent and very dangerous woman.
She delighted in making people scared of her. Her outbursts started out as potentially homicidal from an early age. They did escalate, and of course they escalated to the most barbaric crime you can ever imagine.
The troublesome, bullying Knight left school at 15, soon getting what she described as her dream job, cutting up offal here at the local abattoir. Before long, she was promoted to the coveted job of boner, and so began her lifelong fascination with knives.
She had knives hanging above her head in bed. They were mounted upon her walls. She was very proud of them, almost more proud of them than any other possession that she had.
Given the abuse she suffered as a child, Katherine Knight never had a normal relationship with any man. It was only a matter of time before it all went terribly wrong.
I think that her destiny was sort of set in stone, at least by early adolescence. She was already extremely violent. She was fantasising about violence. She was incapable of feeling true empathy, true love towards anybody.
Knight had a succession of doomed partnerships from her late teens. The first to feel her rage was abattoir worker David Kellett on their wedding night.
She almost murdered her first husband by choking him because he didn't perform sexually the way that she expected him to.
Kellett and Knight had 2 children, but the marriage ended after a few years. Her other relationships were just as volatile.
Another partner didn't obey her commands, so she took his puppy, held him in her arms and in front of him, cut his throat and let the dog bleed to death in front of him. She smashed another partner in the face with an iron and then chased after him with him running from her, trying to cave his head in as well.
Knight eventually met and started a relationship with a house-proud mine worker named John Price.
Pricey, as he was known, was separated and lived here with 2 of his children, the eldest, Rosemary. He knew about Knight's violent reputation, but at first seemed remarkably unconcerned.
She wanted Dad to marry her, and I said, don't you dare. And he used to make jokes of it all the time. Oh, I'm going to marry her. We're going to have a baby, and I used to think he was a psycho.
Pricey's daughter Rosie had her doubts about Knight from the beginning.
So was your father a little blind to her conniving ways?
Mm-hmm. Very. I used to tell Dad all the time, get rid of her. Just over the years, they were together 7 years off and on. Me on the outside looking in, I could see exactly what was happening. I could see what she was doing.
Do you think it's fair to call her a psychopath?
Yeah. Definitely.
Rosemary's concerns were soon realised. The relationship followed Knight's usual pattern of arguments and assaults. Knight even dobbed in John Price for stealing from work, getting the likeable mine worker fired.
It was devastating for him. So he's 43 years old, unemployed, and he identified himself as a workman.
Price kicked the vindictive Knight out of his house, but she kept coming back. Like many men before him, Price discovered that Katherine Knight didn't take kindly to rejection.
It wasn't just about losing him or losing his love, because Katherine really couldn't feel love. It's a lot more about control and owning the victim than it is about loss. So when she wanted to, she moved on from her partners. But if they tried to move on from her, that's when she would exact her revenge.
John Price had an inkling something was wrong, and in late February came to the Scone Magistrates Court to get a restraining order against Katherine Knight. Then that afternoon, he called his mates and colleagues and said if he didn't make it to work the following day, it was because Knight had killed him. And that's exactly what happened.
Dad said, I've got to go to the courthouse and the police station to see what they can do to keep this crazy bitch away from me.
If Katherine Knight wasn't going to have John Price, then nobody else was. And so on February 29th, she set about taking revenge. It was meticulously planned.
Knight even videotaped what amounted to a crude will before sending Pricey's kids away for a sleepover while he was at work. Then she waited for him to return home. How much planning would have gone into this?
Well, she would have been fantasising about murdering a human for many years, and this was the culmination of it. So Katherine planned this very carefully.
Price spent the evening with neighbours before returning home to sleep around 11 p.m. Knight arrived later and watched TV for a few minutes. Then she had a shower. She dressed in lingerie she'd brought that day before waking Price and having sex. When Pricey fell asleep again, Knight attacked. Viciously, ferociously, like the butcher she was, stabbing him at least 37 times. Then, a few hours later, the final act of revenge.
She coldly and calculatedly skinned this man very, very carefully. In fact, it was so precise that upon autopsy they were able to re-put the skin back onto his body in a really grotesque way, but it actually fit back again.
But Katherine Knight still wasn't finished.
She cut his head off and boiled it. She cut parts of his body off and cooked them with vegetables to serve to his children, plated them up, stabbed photos of his children. She also fed parts of his body to the dog. In the middle of all this, Katherine stopped for a while, went up the road, withdrew $1,000 from his bank account and came home.
Then, as the sun came up, Knight surveyed her handiwork.
Would Katherine have seen this murder on that night as a work of art?
Yeah, she did. She took a lot of pride. She saw this as, her triumph.
When police arrived, after calls from concerned workmates, they found Knight lying comatose on the bed and John Price's head in a pot on the stove.
All I wanted for him was not to suffer. And he did suffer. He would have been in shock. So yes, he did suffer. He would have been, I think that's what I think of, how scared he would have been. He got out of the house though. He almost got out. He did get out. But she dragged him back in.
This is after she stabbed him?
Yep. She stabbed him the whole way as he was running down the hallway to get outside.
The most terrifying thing to imagine would be in the face of somebody like Katherine Knight, who is in the fullness of her emotion. It takes an extreme amount of pressure or stress to get a psychopath to feel, and she would have been really revelling in that moment.
Katherine Knight pleaded guilty to the shocking murder. She is one of just 4 Australian women to have her file marked never to be released.
How do you block that out? How do you move on from something like that?
I sort of look at it, how my dad would have dealt with it. And I think that's what gets me through. And I didn't realise it until after he died. He had the best outlook on life, that bloke.
Still to come on Inside Story.
Well, what I really want to do is I want to reach in, rip out their heart, and eat it before they die.
The weirdest twist of all.
I have the biology for it.
The expert who is a psychopath himself.
You don't have to kill a Rick to be a psychopath.
Prepare yourselves for a shock. Not all psychopaths are bloodthirsty killers. The vast majority are seemingly ordinary people, a friend, a neighbour, even your boss, or just possibly the person sitting next to you right now.
Do you feel blame? Are you mad? Do you feel like wolves kebabs right French?
This is what most of us think a psychopath looks and sounds like. Charles Manson, who led a cult known as the Family, masterminded Hollywood's infamous Helter-Skelter killings in 1969. His brainwashed followers slaughtered 7 people, including Sharon Tate, the pregnant wife of film director Roman Polanski.
You've got it stuck in your brain that I murdered somebody.
Manson has been in prison for more than 40 years, and he's still maintaining his innocence, still showing no remorse.
What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here.
The truth is, there are plenty of psychopaths living amongst us, and they're not always raving serial killers, not all Charles Mansons.
If you're wondering how to spot the psychopath in your life, then consider this. Do they break promises? Do they take credit for the work of others? Are they bullies? Would they tell you to pull yourself together if a member of your family died? Are they remorseless in the pursuit of a goal? Do they fake sincerity with great conviction? Well, if the answers are yes, then your boss, your colleague, your neighbour or your friend could be a psychopath.
Very, very charming, and they'll never bother you. But they may, if you hang around them long enough, try to talk you into something. They'll use you and manipulate you. Maybe not to invest in something, maybe not for sex, or maybe not to kill you, but they're going to use you for something. You don't have to kill or rape to be a psychopath.
Professor Fallon should know. Not only is he one of the world's foremost authorities on psychopaths, he's a psychopath himself. Well, he certainly ticks plenty of boxes, and he has the heritage to prove it. A long line of convicted killers in the family, 7 at last count.
So I'm, kind of a borderline. I'm not a full psychopath at all, but I have a lot of traits, and I have the biology for it, and it never quite made sense why I wasn't a really much worse character, no angel, but why I wasn't really a criminal, because I have all those capabilities and genetics, and I realized what a wonderful environment, what a wonderful life I had growing up.
And there are plenty of people like Jim Fallon. It's estimated 1 in every 100 of us is a full-blown psychopath. Many more are borderline, and they're often in the workplace, thriving at somebody else's expense, as so convincingly portrayed by Kevin Spacey in the movie Horrible Bosses.
Well, no, but according to this, you were 2 minutes late, so either you're a liar, or this system is off by a full minute. And if that's the case, then I'm going to have to fire Thomas, our longtime security coordinator.
May have been 2 minutes late.
Oh. Well, then you were lying.
The workplace psychopath targets people, and they have this almost a radar for targeting weak or vulnerable people.
Let me tell you something, you stupid little runt. I own you. You're my bitch. So don't walk around here thinking you have free will, because you don't. I can crush you anytime I want.
The psychopath identifies that unique psychological need the victim wants and gives that and then takes it away repeatedly.
For months you've been hinting that I was in line for that promotion?
And look how hard you've been working.
What, you just lying to me?
Lying? No, Nick. Motivating.
They use third parties as well. So they spread gossip. They take out most of the team members and do fun things. And everyone enjoys being with the psychopath except the victim. And the victim is isolated from their team. That's the start of the process to actually break that person.
I've been in that position for 8 years now. Why would I stay here after being treated like this?
Well, because I'd make sure that nobody in the industry would ever hire you again.
Bullshit.
No, because they're going to want my letter of recommendation, right? So I'm perfectly willing to write that you are an insubordinate, dishonest drunk.
We get this right today. But we'll squeeze some of those shorts. Squeeze them hard.
And it's the dog-eat-dog world of high finance the psychopath can truly prosper. Here, they're right at home with the likes of Dick Fuld, head of the failed Lehman Brothers, a man legendary for ruling through fear and intimidation, 2 classic traits of the psychopath.
I'm soft, I'm lovable. But what I really want to do is I want to reach in, rip out their heart, and eat it before they die.
The thing about the workplace psychopath is it's not so much about money. It's more about power and control over people. And some of the psychopaths I've spoken to who are high up in organisations actually wish that they were back at the start low in the organisation because, quite frankly, they're bored. They've manipulated people, they've played the games. It's all about the game itself, so the money is just a bonus.
But for all the misery psychopaths can inflict on our lives, throughout history they have sometimes played a pivotal role in war and peace.
We need them to fight our wars. We need them to go over the mountain, to have sex with other tribes. You know, it's like, it's not a very good thing for personally or for your family. But for if you look at what's good for the survival of the species, these things that are very positive for the survival are psychopathic.
Coming up on screen and in real life, how killers have the last laugh.
You can't cure psychopaths.
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you?
He's one of the best movie villains of all time.
No, you complete me.
The late Heath Ledger's menacing Joker not only won him an Oscar, but also made The Dark Knight a massive box office hit.
To them, you're just a freak.
But it's not only great entertainment. Heath Ledger's deranged criminal mastermind is also a frighteningly accurate portrayal of a psychopath. In fact, FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole rates it the best.
I felt that Heath Ledger really exhibited some phenomenally close traits of psychopathy in a way that I've never seen before.
I said hands up, heads down! Let's go, pal! I'm making a withdrawal here.
A psychopath is going to do more of a takeover bank robbery. They're not going to go in and just hand the teller quietly a notice.
On the ground! Stay on the ground! Nobody make a move!
And then they're putting the money in the back of the school bus, and one of Heath Ledger's or the Joker's colleagues turns to ask him a question, and Heath Ledger, just without even thinking about it, and in a very casual way, turns and shoots his colleague.
What happened to the rest of the guys?
So you see there's no loyalty there with a psychopathic individual.
Criminals in this town used to believe in things. Honor, respect. Look at you. What do you believe in, huh? What do you believe in?
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you a stranger.
While the Joker may have faded into the shadows of Gotham City, in real life, the endings aren't always so neat. And many of the most notorious of psychopaths, like Ted Bundy and Australia's granny killer John Glover, went to their graves refusing to admit to all of their crimes.
So they're in prison and they still have something over society because they still have all of these homicides police want to solve, and they're the only ones who know about this. And the ultimate thing for the psychopath is power and control.
Former detective Dennis O'Toole visited John Glover in prison more than 30 times in the hope he would admit to 3 other murders.
We needed a confession, and he was very much aware of that. And it was a cat and mouse game between he and I for a number of years. I continued that liaison with the hope that he would eventually, some shred of humanity would come out of him.
But Glover had no humanity. He committed suicide in 2005, taking his secrets with him.
I think I went and had a drink, I must admit. I couldn't believe that over all those years and the frustrations and the letdowns that he'd escaped this. It was very frustrating. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. What's happened's happened, but yes, it was just all wasted.
How often do you think about him now?
I do think of him from time to time, and unfortunately, as with probably some of the other members of the task force, I do dream from time to time about I wish I didn't, but it's there.
A true psychopath is a complicated specimen to understand. Many think that they are insane and should be locked up in psych wards. What we learn tonight is that they are cunning and conniving liars, art manipulators with no empathy. But can they be cured?
I have a textbook on my shelves that says that the shortest chapter in psychiatric history is how to cure a psychopath, because there really isn't any evidence that once their personality is developed that we can change that.
You can't cure psychopaths. In fact, we know that rehabilitation programs, at least for the criminal ones, make them worse. And the reason it makes them worse is because it teaches them social skills that they then use to better manipulate their victims. So all we can do is manage a psychopath.
For Katherine Knight, the woman who so brutally murdered her partner John Price, that means life behind bars, never to be released.
Do you think she can be cured?
No.
But that doesn't stop Rosie Price wanting some answers.
Because I went through a stage where I just wanted 5 minutes with Katherine with a baseball bat. Just put me in a cell with her for 5 minutes. And I want her to suffer just as much as we have to. Let her think about it every single day for the rest of her life, like we have to.
Do you think she's doing that?
Probably not.